They called it Imperium sine fiend, an empire without end. But behind Rome's marble facades and immortal myths lies a ledger inked in fireblood and silence. This was not merely a state, it was an engine of conquest driven by dread, sharpened by steel, and sanctified by fear. Where Rome's shadow touched resistance was not subdued, it was obliterated. Whole peoples vanished, their languages, silenced, their homes ground to ash beneath legionary boots. Rome reshaped the world, but its majesty was carved atop a mountain of suffering. What we now hail as civilization, many once mourned as extermination. The ruins still whisper if you dare to listen. Crucifixion as state terror. To oppose Rome was not just to die, it was to become a lesson. Crucifixion, the dreaded crux, was not a method of execution. It was a ritual of public terror. Reserved for slaves, rebels, and the voiceless, it showcased pain as theater. It said, "This is your fate if you defy us." In 71 BCE, after the slave army of Spartacus was crushed, Marcus Licinius Crassus staged a horror still echoing in history. Along the Appian Way, over 6,000 crucified bodies stretched for more than 100 miles. Appian recorded that the road to Rome's heart became a corridor of death, a visual threat to every soul who might dream of rebellion. But the horror wasn't confined to Italy. From the hills of Judea to the moors of Britannia, crosses sprouted like weeds wherever defiance bloomed. Crucifixion was psychological warfare in its most grotesque form. It wasn't just about death, it was about domination. Pain became Rome's propaganda, fear its eternal enforcer, erasing Carthage from existence. No act captures Rome's hunger for absolute control like the erasure of Carthage. This wasn't a war, it was an exorcism. The phrase Carthago delenda est Carthage must be destroyed became a mantra of the Roman Senate, obsessively repeated by Cato the Elder. In 146 BCE, that curse became reality. Carthage, once Rome's rival titan of the Mediterranean, was besieged for over 2 years by Scipio Aemilianus. When its walls fell, the city became a funeral pyre. According to Appian, the citizens were slaughtered or sold into slavery. The city itself leveled stone by stone. Legends claim the Romans sowed salt into the earth so nothing could grow again. Scholars debate the literal truth, but the symbolism remains chilling, not just defeat, but deletion. Carthage was unmade. A world was buried not beneath rubble, but beneath intentional forgetting. Because for Rome, some enemies weren't to be ruled, they were to be erased. The burning of Gaul. When Julius Caesar looked north to Gaul, he didn't just see land to conquer, he saw a blank slate. And for nearly a decade, he bled it dry. Tribes were crushed, towns erased, and the land reshaped in Rome's image. In 52 BCE, the city of Avaricum became a symbol of Rome's fury. Caesar called it Gaul's most beautiful city and then annihilated it. After a brutal siege, Roman soldiers stormed its gates and massacred nearly 40,000 people. Caesar wrote about it casually, as though noting a calculation in a ledger. Cenobum Noviodunum Uxellodunum. Each met similar fates. At Uxellodunum, Caesar ordered the surviving warriors' hands cut off, leaving them alive to wander as warnings. These were not isolated acts. They were part of a policy break, the spirit leave the shell. In Gaul, Rome did not conquer a people, it unmade their future. Starvation as a weapon. Rome wielded hunger like a surgeon's scalpel, precise, patient, and merciless. In siege after siege, starvation wasn't an accident, it was the plan. Walls encircled cities, food supplies severed. Famine crept in slow and choking. During the siege of Numantia, 133 BCE, Scipio Aemilianus, the same who razed Carthage, encased the Celtiberian city in a wall of death. No food, no mercy, no escape. Inside, the people slowly broke. Many chose fire and suicide over the humiliation of surrender. Centuries later in Judea, Titus repeated the same script at Jerusalem. Historian Josephus wrote of parents eating leather, of children dying in silence. Starvation turned resolve into desperation. It was war by attrition, and the Romans mastered it. Hunger didn't just kill, it crushed the soul. Rome called it efficient. The victims called it hell. Mass enslavement as policy. To Rome, victory without profit was incomplete. Enslavement wasn't just consequence, it was strategy. Entire cities were looted not for treasure, but for people. After defeating Epirus in 167 BCE, Aemilius Paulus enslaved 150,000 citizens. Livy noted that towns were emptied. Plutarch wrote that the economic windfall was so immense, Rome suspended taxes for years. This wasn't chaos, it was a business model. In 70 CE, following the sack of Jerusalem, 90,000 were sold into slavery. The young and strong were shipped across the empire to build roads, temples, palaces, monuments to a glory they'd never share. To Rome, the defeated were not just conquered, they were currency. The empire's true face. Rome was not built on reason and stone alone. It was forged in agony, discipline, and silence. What many now romanticize as the cradle of civilization was to countless others a boot pressed to the neck of history. These were not isolated atrocities. They were blueprints, calculated tools in the empire's arsenal. Rome didn't just crush rebellions, it preemptively shattered the idea by rebellion. Its glory stands on the bones of the forgotten. We walk among its ruins, marvel at its aqueducts, its roads, its laws. But every brick hides a scream, every column a grave. As Tacitus warned, they make a desert and call it peace. A final reflection. What Rome reveals and what we must never forget is that unchecked power wears many masks. It can inspire or it can erase. It can build or it can consume. Its legacy is not just in what it left behind, but in what it buried. If Gertrude's tragedy teaches anything, it's this: power without compassion sows division. Leadership is not conquest, it is understanding. Not domination, but dignity. The ruins of empires whisper that truth across time. Because real strength is knowing when not to crush. Rome still stands in the ruins, white marble crumbling beneath centuries, ancient roads winding through forgotten landscapes, laws carved into the foundation of modern civilization. But behind the stories of glory lies a truth buried beneath the dust, the cries of people whose names no longer exist, the blood of slaves nailed to crosses, the memory of cities that once flourished but now are nothing more than ashes. Rome was not built solely on law and stone, but on silence imposed by force and fear used as policy. We often say that power corrupts, but Rome teaches something deeper. When a civilization chooses control over justice, fear over compassion, and conquest over understanding, then no matter how far it spreads, what it leaves behind is an empty legacy, one made of ruins, not of meaning. Rome's magnificence cannot erase the pain it inflicted. Its true lesson is not found in its victories, but in what was sacrificed to achieve them. Because true strength does not lie in domination, it lies in listening and empathy and preserving our shared humanity, even when we have the power not to. Rome conquered the world, but in doing so, it may have lost the very soul that made it worth remembering.